Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. Welcome to another installment of the JOMWA Saves series, the series of videos where I review affordable lookalikes of unaffordable or downright unobtainable Swiss watches. And today it's another Cronos. Cronos know how to make a fantastic watch, if not how to design a fantastic watch. Their entire catalogue is borrowed from someone else's catalogue, more or less, and today they've been copying Tudor's homework. The watch on my wrist is a lookalike of the relatively new Black Bay 54. Now the Black Bay 54 is more or less a shrunken version of the Black Bay 58 with the diameter dropping from 39mm to 37mm. Now that may be relatively small in today's market, but that was very much the going rate back in the 1950s when the original Tudor dive watch was released. So this watch is for people who enjoy wearing a smaller dive watch, but don't quite have the 5,500 AUD/3,850 USD required to stump up for the original. The Cronos comes in at around 6.5% of that price tag. 300 Aussie, 175 USD during the current sale. Now, you saw the pop-up. This video is sponsored by the Cronos official store on AliExpress. They sent me this watch, I don't have to send it back. I will therefore of course leave a link in the description of the video to the listing in their store. You probably already know whether you're into this one or not. So we only need to answer one question today. Is it any good? Let's flip the camera and find out. Okay, let's do it. Packaging. This is new for Cronos. Little black case with a canvas book style zipper, and when you unzip it you get a couple of tools, everything you need to size and adjust the watch therefore, i.e. a screwdriver and a spring bar removal tool. You also get a second strap, a Marine Nationale. I'll never complain about freebies, so I'm not going to complain about this. I'm just not going to concentrate on it. And you also get what I think is a very attractive little watch. I say little, it doesn't actually look or feel that small. I always quote my sweet spot as between 38 and 42mm in diameter. I was worried therefore that this one would look and feel small on my wrist, but I just don't think it does. It has plenty of presence thanks to a nicely finished case, a big piece of sapphire and a shiny bezel insert. And it actually has a bit more beef than you might have expected. Okay, dimensions then, I guess we know the first one. It should be 37. I measure it at 37.2mm in diameter, just a touch bigger. 13.4mm thick though, so it does have a bit of chunk to it as I said, but it wears very nicely thanks to a 46mm lug tip to lug tip. It's 20mm between the lugs on the supplied rivet bracelet. Sized up for my 7-inch wrist, it weighs in at 143 grams. As I said, a bit of chunk for a small diver. 200 meters of water resistance, screw down crown, box double dome sapphire, but I don't think there's any AR undercoating on there. So much Flecto here today, more on that later. And the movement, well maybe you saw in the listing you get a choice of either a PT5000 or an SW200. I think most people will opt for the PT5000. That gets you the $170 ticket price. You're looking at over $300 with a Salita. I think most people buying a homage will have one eye on the price, and so we'll go for the cheaper movement. Nothing wrong with either. They're both clones of the ETA 2824, but one is Swiss, one is Chinese. You can't see them either way because they're both concealed behind that classic Tudor sterile caseback. Case finish is broadly similar to that of the Tudor, so high polished sides, brush upper lug surfaces, and a nice high polished chamfer between the two. The bezel is also high polished. Not the best for grip therefore, but not awful. It's not a particularly tight bezel. It is a small watch, it has a small crown, 5.5mm with the Cronos hourglass logo embossed into it. It does the job, but it could be a little bit larger for ease of use. Nice bracelet though. I know Tudor takes some stick for the fact that these are faux rivets. It's never bothered me with a Tudor, and it doesn't bother me with a lookalike. Solid end links, female end links, plenty of articulation for comfort, but they're not 5-piece links, they are 3-piece links trying to look like 5-piece links, if you see what I mean. Again, the clasp is pretty nice, if nothing like the one on the Tudor. It's clearly just an off-the-shelf part. Cronos branded, high polished chamfered edges all the way around, double triggers, 3 holes of micro adjust, milled upper, milled lower, and one cheeky little bonus. A high quality diver's extension. It's hard to get a diver's extension right, but somehow Cronos have managed it for $170. Whether anyone will use it or not is, however, a matter for debate. The bezel action is quite good, if not quite up there with Tudor standards. 120 click unidirectional dive time, it's fully loomed, which you'll see in a second, and has the Lume pip in addition at the 12. It is ceramic though, as opposed to the Tudors, which is aluminium. Ceramic combined with that sapphire means you get a lot of light play from this one. I guess that's another reason why it doesn't look or feel particularly small, because there's actually rather a lot going on most of the time. Alright, dial and hands, we're not going to be here forever because they're pretty much a one for one of the Tudor. So everything is applied, high polished gold on a very nice glossy black dial with additional gold printing. It's Tudor pattern indices, so a long triangle at 12, batons at 3, 6 and 9, and circles everywhere else. It's a well proportioned snowflake handset. Both minute hand and second hand reach exactly where they should, that being the printed minute track around the outer edge. And there's far less dial verbiage than your average Tudor, just the branding above the dial and automatic and the depth rating beneath it. The dial even has a little bit of sunburst under the right circumstances. I must say though, under the wrong circumstances, the Cronos branding rather disappears. The printing is quite thin, it's quite small, and the Tudor dial design doesn't actually leave much space for a logo. Maybe for some people buying a lookalike though, that won't necessarily be a problem. Lume. Lume is pretty good. Now, it's not massively obvious initially, but there are two different colours here. It's BGW9 for the bezel insert and C3 on the dial and the handset. Definitely not something you'll see on a Tudor. It's not massively obvious because they're both so bright initially. Now, if I turn the speed up, you can see the bezel insert fade first, particularly the numerals, but the dial and the hands hang on very well. You can still get a nice clear, easy read at the end of my test, which is not something you can always say with a sub $200 watch. Impressive stuff therefore. Okay, wrist shots. Let's start by looking down the wrist. 37mm in diameter, but 46mm lug to lug. This one has more presence than you might imagine. And that's because both the weight and the thickness. As discussed, there's so much light play here that there's always something to look at when you roll your wrist, whether that's the high polished chamfers on the case, matching the high polished chamfers on the clasp, or the sapphire and ceramic combo. When I pull back a bit though for some more context, it fits my wrist nicely. Now, you may know that I have the 39mm Black Bay 58. I thought that a homage of its little brother would therefore be too small for me, but I could totally rock this size. Perhaps therefore my window is actually 37 to 42 and not 38 to 42. And again, that's the pocket shot for even more context. Low and loose for this style of watch for me. Once again, you can see a lot of light play and a lot of flecto. You're going to have to be into both of those things if you want to pick up one of these. Segueing nicely into the moans and niggles. Nothing major today really. Philosophically, the people who aren't into homages, lookalikes, whatever you want to call them, have already checked out after leaving an angry comment, if they even clicked on the video. That's fine, this watch isn't for them. If you are okay with someone else's design with a different brand name on the dial, there's far more here to like than to dislike considering the price tag. The clasp is actually very good, if nothing like the Tudor clasp, but it's fiddly to move the spring bar between those three holes of micro adjustment, and it's the spring bar's fault, it's quite stiff. It's not a deal breaker, but if you do buy one of these, bear that in mind, consider yourself warned. There is also a ghost date position. This is the SW200 version as noted. I don't think I've ever seen a no date SW200. Does it exist? If you've seen one, leave me a comment, let me know. Again, not a deal breaker, but just something I ought to point out. And yeah, the word of the day is flecto. An aluminium bezel insert would have toned it down quite a bit, as would have some anti-reflective treatment on the crystal. But it's a vintage style watch, so it does kind of suit it, even if it does kind of interfere with the legibility of the dial and the handset on occasions. But when I'm complaining about the combination of sapphire and ceramic on a $170 watch, I should probably stop complaining. And that's it really. Assuming you go for the PT5000 version, which I would imagine most people will, you get what is undoubtedly one of the best made watches I've come across under $200 recently. I think the last couple of sub $200 watches that have really impressed me have been by San Martin and by Cronos. Now, I don't review as many Cronos as San Martin because they only do lookalikes, and once you've reviewed one lookalike, like you've kind of reviewed them all in a way. But they seem to be one of the first companies to have been inspired by the BB54, which is why I thought I would give this one a crack. And if you too have been inspired by the original watch but are less than inspired by its price tag, you could do a lot worse than to check out one of these. So there you have it, another really nicely made watch by Cronos. If you want a straight up one for one, they really are up there with the best at making lookalikes of expensive Swiss watches. It's a small diver with all of the pros and all of the cons of small divers. It's so neat and tidy on wrist, but it's not as legible as a bigger diver, and it's a bit of a jolt if you're not used to wearing a watch this size. As I said, I have reviewed a few Cronos on the channel in the past. Click here or here to see two of my favourites. Thanks for making it all the way to the end. I'll see you again in the next one.